thanks to my Ko-fi supporters that make these videos possible. You can also get a deck review on my weekly Tuesday and Sunday streams. It's the best way to support the channel.
Hello everyone. I find that a lot of people's frustration with the Commander format are heavily misplaced. This is pretty obvious when you look at the kinds of videos I make and the positions I take defending combos and tutors as a healthy part of the Commander ecosystem. That being said, I don't simultaneously really illustrate how to maybe navigate these hurdles in these videos. I typically just try and point out why I don't find them to be flaws. I do cover it in other videos, but unless you go digging for that advice past that first video, you're not going to hear that advice. And that's kind of what this video is about here today. How to build your deck with the idea of table interaction in mind, why it's important, and why it can probably cure some of the pain points you have with the Commander format, if you have any. Now, this video isn't just going to be drivel about running removal in Commander. There are far more ways to have table interaction than just Doomblade. Removal is absolutely an important aspect of a Commander deck, and it is a topic I'll get out of the way now. But it's going to go far beyond just saying run it. I respect you enough to know that you probably are running removal. The only issue that can come up is whether or not you're running the right removal for your list. I already covered the most obvious example of this in a previous video called I Hate Your Commander Deck, which mentioned the example of how Torpor Orb can shut off a Blink deck's removal suite, including its artifact removal. There's more to finding the right removal for your deck than this, though. You can have all the best removal in the game in a vacuum for your deck, but none of that matters if it doesn't shore up what your deck is actually soft to in context. Let's look at some examples of what I mean here. In Cormella, I run a lot of generically good Grixis removal spells. Chaos Warp, Overwhelming Surge is an Abrade variant, Prismari Command, and Withering Torment, right? All of these 3 mana value spells can be cast with or without Cormella around. This being said, if Cormella gets removed, unramping me by 2 turns, my large swath of top-end plays aren't at risk, because in addition to these inexpensive spells, my list also runs 7 Wraths, with half of those being castable early without Cormella in play, allowing me to bridge the gap early or catch up late, even if my explosive early game potential is removed from me. Besides Cormella utilizing 3 mana instants to be mana efficient with her ability, and using Wraths to stabilize and lengthen games in case she gets removed, in Kinesos I feel we truly see how a removal suite is built with a deck in mind. I do run a Miser's Beast Within and Rapid Hybridization if a Linvala or something that stops me finds itself in play, but around 80% of the deck's removal suite is concentrated in counter magic. These spells are both used in an offensive manner if a Bolas' Citadel ends up on the stack or something, but they can also be used as defensive spells that keep my giant sea monsters safe from removal that I'm using to tenderize you. On top of all of this, Kinesos runs Cryptic Command, Scourge of Fleets, and Summon Leviathan, all of which are oppressive on an empty board or a lethal one. Kinesos' counterspell happy nature really touches on another aspect of being interactive with your table, having answers for your opponent's interaction. It's not enough to just be disrupting your opponent's plays. You need to be defending your own in a lot of decks. Now, does every deck need protective maneuvers? Not at all. I think a great example of this is my Judith deck. What Judith lacks in protective plays, she more than makes up for in resilience. I'm never redirecting spells with an untimely malfunction or anything of the sort, but what I am doing is returning all of my creatures with Chthonian Nightmare, Agadeem's Awakening, Lively Dirge, or Living Death. Removal means very little as well, with all the redundant effects in the deck, like sacrifice outlets, payoffs, and fodder. If you answer one, chances are a different one will get drawn to replace it. Something like Farrakha as well doesn't run much protection at all. The mana in this deck can get absurd, so something like Shigeki can loop any card ever played or destroyed back to my hand at instant speed, and then do it again with a Balagad Recovery or Tortured Existence. On top of this, I'm not attached to most creatures in Farrakha anyway, since, well, she can eat the creatures in the graveyard for value. This lack of a protection needed can extend surprisingly to something like Jasath, who at first glance looks like something you would crave to protect, but in reality, she's protected by ramping hard, allowing you to cast her even if she's killed the first 2 go-arounds. Single target removal doesn't answer all the dinosaurs she comes swinging out with, after all. As far as decks that are more interested in protecting important permanents, it's a matter of curve, meta, and game plan to find the best cards that fit the job. Let's look at Jasath again for an example. Jasath might not need an untimely malfunction or a heroic intervention to keep herself afloat, but what she is squishy to is counter magic and other instant speed things that deal with her before she's able to smooch your opponent to vomit the top 7 dinos into play. If you have a Jasath, it's for these reasons that you might want to stray away from these redirect and hexproof granters and lean more into effects like Cutsil or Ranger Captain of Eos that stop spells during your turn. Looking at something like Pantlaza though, while she's vulnerable to counter magic of course, she's not so vulnerable to instant speed removal, as a Pantlaza deck is more than happy to run flicker spells which not only provide value but also serve as protection for Pantlaza or any other dinosaur you run. Ultimately, protection spells can come in a large swath of flavors. They're not one size fits all. Jasath can survive a board wipe, but it can't survive an instant speed kill spell or a counter spell. Judith can have any number of things go wrong, and yet there will always be a replacement ready in the wings due to the ridiculous number of redundant effects. Your protection shouldn't just be what you have laying around in the binder, it should shore up severe weaknesses in your game plan. Is the protection you're running currently doing that? There's still a couple of important notes about protector spells for those of you that need them for your list. What are you contending with the most at your game store or friend group? Do you play with randoms mostly? This will heavily inform what amount and what kind of protection you run for your deck. My play group doesn't really run Farewell or anything, but my friend John does have a lot of decks with evacuation effects. This increases the value of something like Guardian of Faith substantially, since it gets returned to my hand to be used again later, even while phasing out the rest of my board. This subsequently shores me up against Farewell if I ever run into it while playing at a convention or what have you. Even if your playgroup is very interaction light, it's still plenty worth it to run protection spells that are modal or cast a wide net in order to shore up those matchups if you ever do play against someone new. Commander doesn't have a game 2 or 3, and it doesn't have a sideboard. Think about what the meta share is among cards that really put a hamper on your plans, and then hedge against them. You can always cycle your Temples under attack, or draw a card with Timna off a Selfless Spirit, or Fog with your Dawn Charm. The other major point about Curve is when it comes to protective plays. Your protection doesn't do much good if you can't cast it alongside the thing you want to protect. A previous piece of advice I've given for Bracket 3 is that you want to be winning by about turn 7, or at least have an indomitable lead. If part of that game involves playing a 4-drop like Starlight Spectacular into an already existing evasive token board of spirits, great news! It's super easy to hold open mana for a reprieve and have it work out the way you want, since you'll still have those 2 to 3 untapped lands lounging around. If your game-winning plan is more on the end of tapping out for a Bruna to reanimate Gisela and meld into Brizella to turn off most spells from opponents like my Kellen deck does, it's not going to be feasible to hold open that mana some games and counteract end-of-turn removal in response to the meld trigger. And it's likely better for you to use permanent base protection like Mother of Runes, Ranger Captain of Eos, or Voice of Victory to have a safe turn without needing to invest more mana. Okay, now all this protection and removal talk and how to fit them in your deck's theme and curve is all fine and dandy, but how does this quell the pain points in Commander like I alluded to? Well, when you run the proper interactive spells and defensive tools so that they're easy to use in your curve, your agency during a game increases drastically. Even if your deck is incapable of running instant speed removal, which is best in the face of a combo, you can still have a ton of options to answering opposing lines in the form of Hate Bears and other disruptive permanents. These disruptive pieces too, cards like Hushbringer, Collector Oof, or Eidolon of the Great Revel, can not only stifle opposing plays, but also maybe eat the removal for your more important cards. This lightning rod effect makes them well worth mentioning in a video that is this heavy about protection, like this one. Tell me though, how do you fit interactive elements in your deck? Did this video reveal to you any that you run that you maybe now realize weren't best for the job? Do you have a deck with a relatively wacky interaction package or protection suite? Let me know down in the comments below, and until next time, bye! Since you'll have 2 to 3 untapped lands still rounding. Similarly,